Greetings everyone, my name is Etterville, and welcome back to my Let's Play of StarBreak. During the last part, I completed the Frozen Blight mission as well as the Elite Vanquished mission. And now I'll be completing the Elite Frozen Blight mission a few times as well. This is the Elite version of course, so it will be a little bit more challenging. I was waiting for a little bit to see if anyone else would spawn in, and we have at least 2 or 3 other people to help, so that'll be useful. Now, I would like to make a correction from one of the things I did in the last part. In the previous part, I actually avoided getting the Jansky repeater. If you're a newer player, you should actually get the Jansky repeater, as that 200 extra range helps quite a bit, or rather the 500 range value, because you can hit enemies from further or far back, so it makes it a lot easier to avoid getting completely decimated, especially with lower armor values. It really helps if you're not exactly as skilled as more veteran players, as that's actually part of the Soidal series of repeaters, and that's one of the exotic weapon types that the wildfire has access to. It's called Soidal mainly because it fires in a sinusoidal pattern, which is also quite helpful because it can hit enemies who are just directly above or below you more easily compared to, let's say, the repeater. So let's continue onwards. So, and the Jansky repeater is the first of the exotic weapon type of the Soidal series. So you might as well pick up one of them because it may be useful, especially in areas where you can't really hit enemies at close range, or you can't get close enough to them. And the Elite version of this area also provides a nice... Oh, wow, that's actually a better one. Sure, I'll take it, but I won't really have as much use for it. As I was saying, especially if you have enemies from afar, it'll be really useful. Now, enough talking about the Jansky repeater, now let's talk about this mission. I'll talk more about the Jansky repeater once we get to the end of this mission. The Elite Frozen Blight, as you can see here, has a lot more enemies, and a lot more dangerous enemy types. As you already saw, those Yetis fire a lot more axes at a time. Not to mention there's a huge influx of those fly enemies, as you may have noticed. Plus, from the background alone, you can see that it's a lot more spiky. There's a lot more ice shards everywhere. Thankfully, they don't damage you, but it's one thing to keep in mind. Well, at least we're getting a lot of help from a bunch of players. I would like an ironclad, especially for some of the projectile weapons. But we haven't got to the worst of the bunch of enemies yet. This area can get very hectic, especially if we don't have a lot of players, because of the tight corridors, well, even tighter than before, and the huge influx of enemies that can happen at a time, if you're not careful. Okay, here's the mini-boss, this Arctic Wolf. Well, it's called a wolf, apparently, even though it looks like a quite mutated one. Unfortunately, I looked up the wiki, but the enemies don't really have official enemy names yet, so I'll just make them up as I go along. Like, for example, this is what would be another nice area where if you have the Jansky repeater or any of the Soidal series of weapons, you can hit them from afar and be at less risk of getting hurt. Another change I've noticed from this boss fight is that fact that these yellow lurking patterns, or yellow projectiles, they travel a bit faster, and they're a little bit higher in quantity as well. I won't take any of those just yet, mainly because, well, I prefer more air jumps or multi-jumps because of how risky it can be in some of these areas. So let's continue onwards. Sorry if I'm doing brief pauses, I have to make sure that the recording's working well, mainly because there seems to be some odd behaviors I'm having recently where sometimes the recording doesn't record correctly. Right now everything seems to be working fine, so I don't need to worry about it too much. Now if you're wondering why there's so many people kind of rushing this mission, so many people, especially at higher levels, is the fact that this area provides the first tier, or the first item in the Soidal series of weapons for the wildfire. And because elite missions actually have elite missions are the only ones that have access to the experimental or the highest tier possible of gear, where you can have up to about 5 positive modifiers in a weapon, a lot of elite players will try rushing this mission several times in order to get the best of the Jansky repeater. A Jansky repeater with at least 5 modifiers. What this means though is that you can easily get a lot of tier 1 boosts as well as the Jansky repeater, which will be really helpful especially in higher level missions. So if you can, try running this elite version of Frozen Blight several times until you get a repeater with at least 3 modifiers. That will be especially useful in the other tier 2 missions, as well as some of the tier 3 missions. Especially like stuff like the strands, where the threat of instantly dying is always omnipresent. So at least you won't have to worry about going through this mission solo, at least most times. Alright, let's go through the boss door and fight the mutated Yeti. I'll just call it the mutated Yeti mainly because I don't really see a difference. And yeah, the spikes actually damage you. They just stop damaging you after the boss fight's over. Also, another note is the fact that this boss actually fires 2 of those projectiles at a time, or 2 of those boomerangs. Plus, the boss moves a bit faster as well. Yeah, I have to play a little bit more cautiously because I'm at half health now and I won't get any health respawns until the 3rd phase of the fight, where it actually starts, or the 2nd phase of the fight at least, where they start spawning in those flunkies. And then it starts using 3 of these boomerangs at a time. Well, that's nice to know. Before, you were able to fire only 0 or 1 of them. So it's certainly harder. I would like more health though, especially because, okay, I got some more health and I didn't just notice it. Just dodge and weave and the boss shouldn't be too bad. After all, it still has the same base pattern as the Frozen Blight boss, it's just that it just had more projectiles added. Okay, and the other thing is that it fires 2 fireballs at a time that home in on you, and they're faster. Well, up to 2 at a time. Okay, and every time it stops, it'll release all those spikes from the ceiling, and there's more than before. But as long as you can get behind it, it's not too bad. Oh, but I know. Oops, sorry. Oh. And oh boy, I'm almost dead actually. I need to make a retreat here. I'm going to stand back just for a short while. In fact, this is another area where having the Soidal series would be quite helpful because it could fire longer. After all, 300 just goes up to here, and especially with some more dangerous foes, it would be more useful to actually be able to hit them, other than having to keep lobbing grenades, which are temporary weapons. Or even having the Arbalest series of bows would be helpful too. Ow. Well, that was Elite Frozen Blight. Oh, that was Elite Frozen Blight. So let's see if we got the Jansky repeater over here. Okay, we got an antiphon, woven. There's the modified Jansky repeater. I should have picked up the one in the previous part, mainly because it had better skills. Let me demonstrate it. Here's my normal range. And now here's the Jansky repeater. Yep, it travels a lot farther, but unfortunately it doesn't deal as much damage, so it's kind of a trade-off over there. But just for the sake of this run, I'll be playing around with the Jansky repeater for a little bit longer, just so I can demonstrate it, although it does less damage. But after all, this is a Tier 1 Elite version of a Tier 1 mission, so it shouldn't be too bad, or it shouldn't harm me too much. Alright, let's go to Elite Frozen Blight once again. I see there's the Elite Strands over there, but I'm not going to be touching that with a 10-foot pole until I finish the other Tier 3 missions, because I don't want to go through a Tier 4 difficulty mission at this point. That's for sure. As you may have noticed, there's a lot more enemies, especially in these tight corridors. Yeah, very hectic. I would like to end this mission with at least a Jansky repeater with at least 3 modifiers. Then I'll finish off this part. Well, I'll finish off this part once I at least complete this mission 2 or 3 times. That seems to be a good measure. But as I was saying, I will not be touching the Elite Underground Base or the Elite Strands until I finish the Underground Base and Strands. In fact, I'll tend to avoid the Strands mainly due to the risk of instant death. And once I finish the Elite, the Underground Base or the Strands, I'll probably just go immediately over to probably Temple of the Lost or Graveyard, because they're also tier 4 difficulty, but they don't really have as much instant death as compared to the elite version of Strands. Although the bosses have instant death maneuvers, I think for Temple of the Lost, so you gotta keep that in mind. One thing's for certain though, I will not go through any of the tier 3 missions without actually some backup health, so I don't instantly get vaporized by something. Oh boy. Here's what I was referring to, how there can be enemy swarms everywhere. But if you can get them stuck in a choke point like this, it's a lot less dangerous. Plus they don't deal as much damage as they usually do as other enemies, so you don't need to worry about it too much. Oh, and they respawn because I went too far off screen. This is bad. Alright, I'm gonna make a run for the exit. I strayed too far from the group, so enemies now are gonna respawn. Okay, I'm now separated from the group, so I need to do this solo. Well, this is not really optimal, but I can do it. It's only tier 2 in terms of difficulty, and I have good enough gear to absorb most of the shots. But once I can get close enough to the group, I should be fine. Goodbye, I'm not gonna face you all bats, or whatever you are. As I said before, I do wish that the Elite versions of missions actually gave boosts equivalent to the tier of difficulty they're at. Like, this is a normal difficulty mission, but it only drops tier 1 boosts. I would rather have dropped tier 2 boosts, just like the Fungus Cave and the Vanquish do. As you can see here, now that most of my fellow players cleared most of the enemies, so I don't need to worry about them. I just need to rush forward. Unfortunately, I'm not like the whatever the second class name was, I forget their name. They're the ones who can dash, so they can travel a lot faster than I can. Duskwing. Sorry, I had a brain fart over there. Although Duskwings in some regards are a much higher risk because most of their weapons are melee focused, but they don't have the shield just like the Ironclads do. But as I'm demonstrating right here, especially as a newer player, you should probably go for the Jansky series and avoid using the shorter range repeaters so that you can get better used to. You have more time to react to the enemy patterns and learn them, and then you can use stuff like the shotgun and repeaters. I'd also like to correct an earlier error I made. The shotguns don't necessarily always have a higher DPS, because I forgot to factor into account stuff like the modifiers, implants, as well as the exotic series. Not to mention, higher DPS doesn't always matter, especially with the higher bosses, the more difficult bosses, where you probably want to stay farther away. We have less friendly players here, so it's going to be a little bit more challenging to take care of it, but it's only a tier 2 boss in terms of difficulty, so it's not too crazy. Once we get to tier 3 bosses and mini-bosses, stuff will get a lot more challenging. Eventually, when I can actually find a group for Underground Base, I did do some off-screen area exploration into the Underground Base on another account, but unfortunately, I need some extra players because I can't really deal with the mini-boss alone. After about tier 3, unless you get better gear, well, a lot of these areas are going to be high risk. The game really pushes you to play in a group, especially from tier 3 onwards, and once you get to tier 4, tier 5, and tier 6, when I say tier 6 in difficulty, I really just mean Star Cathedral, it's practically mandatory to use a group, otherwise you won't survive. I know there's some crazy players, or very skilled players, who are able to somehow get through the higher tier areas, or tier 4, tier 5 difficulty alone, but I have never seen a solo run at Star Cathedral. Then again, I think it's impossible to do a solo run at Star Cathedral anyway because there's a strict time limit. But I think I've seen some players do elite versions of Temple of the Lost, which are tier 5 difficulty. So many props to them. It is possible, but it just takes a lot of time. And proper gear and proper time and effort so you can do it. I don't know if I'll ever be able to complete Star Cathedral several times. If anything, if I can complete Star Cathedral at least once, and I complete most of the other missions at least once, I'll end the LP there and say that that's my final opinion on StarBreak. Unfortunately, the only way to get the most exotic or the exotic gear of tier 5 is with the +5 up to +5 modifiers is that you need to go to Star Cathedral. And considering how difficult it can be, yeah, I doubt I'm going to ever get the exotic gear at the end of Star Cathedral, unless I'm extraordinarily lucky. Well, I have nothing else much to say about this area, other than the fact that it's a more spiky version of the original Frozen Blight. And all the enemies are tougher, there's higher enemy concentrations, and the boss is also much tougher. I almost died to it the first time, as you may have noticed by the group. Plus, well, there's the first tier of the Soidal series. That's why a lot of high-level players will keep bomb rushing this elite version of Frozen Blight repeatedly, so that they can get a Soidal or a Jansky repeater with up to 5 modifiers. That's all I have to say about the Elite Frozen Blight. The other areas in the future I'll have a lot more to say due to their tougher enemy configurations. This isn't the only area which will have a lot more tight corridors. Temple of the Lost and Underground Base will have that too. Where's the boss fight? Oh. Okay then. I don't think the boss is... Okay, never mind. I thought the boss was just stuck over there against the wall. Okay, here's part phase 2. At least it turned around immediately. Unfortunately, we have these fireballs. Oh, and that fabricator is at really low health as well. I'll have to point out any health I can... If I can find any health, that is. Well, at least I can stay right below it here. Oh, sorry. Better point out health immediately. Now, if they can get back there, then I'll... Oh, if they can get back there, hopefully they're still alive, or they teleported out. Well, at least the spikes only deal 4 damage, too. It can fire up to 3 of these fireballs at a time, never mind. And especially as a solo player, it can be a lot more dangerous because, well, they'll all be tracking you at a time. If there's one other thing I would like of StarBreak, it would be like a utility item where I could actually see the enemy health bar. So that I can better anticipate what I'm supposed to be doing with these bosses. I can better anticipate how to deal with these bosses, or how risky I should play. Okay, this is pretty good too, but I ought to take more armor. Okay, unfortunately this has lower range, but it penetrates. I'll take it. So time to return back home to Eschaton. Let's take a look and see if there's any other interesting items or interesting locals that are open. Well, I've demonstrated the Elite Frozen Blight 2 times, so I think you have a good enough idea of how this mission runs. Well, you know what, I'm gonna go through this solo for at least a few screens and get up to the mini-boss, then I'll end it. So you can get a better idea what he would what you would be facing as a solo player. And at least you can see better, more of the environment without other players just steamrolling everything. Alright, let's go. Wait, 1 second. Alright, let's continue. So as I was saying, now let's try going to this area without most other players just steamrolling it. So now we have these spiky enemies who can destroy all those spikes, whereas before they'd only fire 1 or 2 of them. Not to mention we have all these living plants who can fire a lot more of those plant missiles. But yeah, penetrating is going to be useful, especially if there's a lot of line of enemies at once. Especially in scenarios like here, where, yeah, before they were a lot more dangerous, but now I can just steamroll them. Yeah, definitely a straight upgrade. Unfortunately, these ice blocks still take a while to destroy. Oh hey, we finally got our first ironclad of the mission. You know what, I think I'll just complete this mission one more time, and then I'll end the part. Might as well try at least one more time for this. And then in the next part I'll probably just cover underground base or something. I want to avoid doing the strands because I really don't want to lose my kitted out Wildfire, who is almost at who sort of has some tier 3 boosts for now. I really want to save that, and once I complete the tier 4 missions, well, I'll then do strands, probably. They're less risky for... I just don't like the idea of instant death looming around every corner, as the strands is basically a series of platforms suspended over an instant death pit, and depending on how far up you may not have enough time to just warp back to home. And I think the exploit where you could just close out your game and immediately teleport back to base, I think that was fixed. So you can't rely on that either. Against a lot of weak enemies, the penetrating modifier is pretty much awesome. It's definitely something you should look forward to. But it gets a little more questionable, or it gets a little bit more subjective, or your mileage may vary if there are enemies who are stronger individually and not that many individual weaker enemies. Then again, if you can get multiple modifiers like penetrating and piercing, well, it's the best of both worlds, or best of 5 worlds, depending how you look at it. But yeah, the charging eddies who just run with a furious lashes, they're kind of dangerous, especially in these large, close-range areas where I can't easily just navigate around. Then again, that's my fault for being extra risky. Whoa, that was a lag spike over there. One of the challenges of playing online games is lag spikes. Or especially lag spikes. It is also a problem in single-player games, but I usually tend to have them more in online games. You may have noticed some lag spikes in Skyforge, when I last played Trove, and this game of course, not to mention the other browser-based games. As you saw over there, one of the wildfires, Eclipse, he actually just was stun-locked over there for a short while. I wonder if I'll go back to Trove. Then again, considering how much of a game that's built on customizability and how it's procedure generated, I think that Trove would be a better game for a live stream. So, but that's for another time. I'll probably leave my more comments on whether I'll continue Trove in my Twitter page or a future YouTube update. Though that seems to be a prime candidate for a live stream. And I'm basically carving right through all of these bats. I used to fear them, now I don't. Not to mention, of course, they drop a huge number of boosts. Once again, too bad they don't actually have tier 2 boosts. Yeah, you can see all the crazy amounts of drops. Too bad there isn't really much of that in the future tiers. Not as much usually. Most of this gear isn't really useful. The only really useful gear will be at the end of this, but a lot of this will be a lot better for tier 1 or tier 2 players. After all, I'm playing through this mission with tier 3 and tier 4 gear for the most part. Well, except my gun. I'll probably be using my gun if I can get a... I'll probably be switching back to the Canticoy repeater, or my basic one, so I can deal a lot more damage, but this one is still useful with its 75 extra range, which will come in handy in some scenarios, so I think I'll keep this in hand, just in case. Not to mention, if I ever lose my wildfire shell, this is the first area I'll probably come to in order to rank up my next shell. Probably the next shell that I'll be playing as, shell or class specifically, will be the Ironclad. I'll be taking a more support-oriented role, but I'll have better survivability, for the most part. Oh, when I said piercing earlier, I meant armor piercing. Alright, we're at the boss. Let's try this for the third time. Although we don't have as much people, so... This may prove to be problematic. I'm just waiting for a few other people to come, and then we'll initiate the boss. So, like I said before, essentially this is a crazier version of the normal Yetis with a lot more attacks. As you can see, the Ironclad can just block that boomerang, so it's really helpful to at least bring one of them. Because then they can absorb all the shots and it'll be a lot less hectic. Alright, we moved on to phase 2 where she's where it starts moving and when it starts summoning all those enemies. Would like some healing though. Oh good, healing. It's always appreciated when other players actually show where the healing stations are, or where the health drops are, as they're quite precious and I don't think there are any healing items in this game. I mean personal consumables in this game. You only get random health drops and item drops. Okay, now we're in phase 3. So let's finish this. Yeah, and basically the Ironclad basically just steamrolls the boss, at least for its projectiles. Another reason why you should be bringing a balanced team composition to the game, to each of the missions. Ironclads for defense, and fabricators for platforming, especially in areas where there are a lot more bottomless pits. One such area would probably be the Strands. They're really helpful for characters who are less acrobatic or have less jumping ability, like Ironclads for example. Really, the wildfires and, as I said before, the wildfires and dustwings are more DPS or damage oriented, and the Ironclads and fabricators are more utility. Ironclads defense and fabricators more for platforming. So they cover two aspects of this game, one for combat, one for the dangerous platforming and environments. Alright, it's over. Let's see if we get the better Manticore, or what was it, Jansky Repeater. Unfortunately, no. I'll still pick it up and I'll drop it right in the main station so that someone else can get it. At least I hope. I don't think equipment is shared based off the chest, but I wonder if you drop it in Eschaton Station, other players will be able to pick it up. So let's drop it right in the center, and hopefully someone else will be able to find a better use for it. I'll also drop this because I don't really need that repeater. So back to the Tektite repeater. A lot shorter range, but it does more damage. Though I think I'll switch between the Jansky repeater and this one several times, when I find a good use for it. Well then, in this part, I cleared the Elite Frozen Blight mission 3 times. In the next part, whenever that comes out, I'll be clearing the underground base mission. Thanks for watching, and have a nice day. Toodles!